So, this is going to be a bit intimate, but I suppose that's what this medium does best. From my microphone to your headset, from the camera on my laptop computer to the back of your eyes. Our spaces commingling virtually. I think we can all agree that after 5 months of social distancing, we can do with a touch of intimacy. Or any touch at all. Which is not entirely true, as I found out 2 weeks ago when I was in my bathroom and I was urinating and I looked down and I saw a tick on my dick. Not just crawling across like it was lost, or confused, as if it was, like, oh, this is as awkward for me as it is for you. No, knew exactly where it was. Burrowed its head into the tip right there, And I'm off to the side. It wanted me to see it. Right dead center. Sort of, you could feel this sort of psychotic glee as it was waiting to see what my reaction would be when I saw it. And I hope I disappointed the tick, because my reaction as I looked down was just to say, really? The pandemic isn't enough? I'm sure this pandemic has jumped the shark for all of us at this point. For me, it was that moment, looking down, seeing the tick on my dick, and realizing that whoever's in charge, like whoever has been writing this story that we have all been forced to participate in, has obviously just given up, is obviously just plumb out of ideas, and is now just been like, I don't know what happens next. I'll put a tick on his dick. I guess. I don't know. I don't care. And you know what? If the person in charge doesn't care, I don't care either. Certainly, I'm not going to let the tick know that I care. So I finished urinating, Sure, why not? I flushed. Yeah, as one does. I went and washed my hands, as you're supposed to do, repeatedly, singing happy birthday many times in a row, very loudly. Didn't even put anything away, everything just hanging out of my underwear, because I want the tick to see all this, And then after that, I did some grooming in the mirror, which, if you could see me, which you're going to momentarily see me, you would see and will see right away that grooming is not something I have done for a very long time. I have one of these pandemic beards now. It's something I've been growing since March. And so the tick should know that this grooming thing that I was doing was really an attempt to sort of just stick my thumb in his eye, which of course I couldn't do literally because tiny, tiny eyes. Okay, so this is what I look like right now. Here we go. This is what we're talking about here. Grooming, right? It's not happening. And I finished that, and then I sort of waddled on out to the staircase, and I called on up to my wife, Vanessa, and I was like, Vanessa, and she said, what? And I said, there's a tick on my dick. And she said, what? And I said, there's a tick on my dick. And she was like, on it? Like walking across? I said, no, burrowed in. Its head burrowed in. Like it's currently, right now, sucking the life out of me. And like that, she was halfway down the stairs. And she was like, are you kidding me? And I said, I want to make one thing clear. I no longer kid about anything. I don't find any of this funny at all anymore. And she was like, okay, what, are you okay? What does it feel like? Is it hurt? Are you in pain? I said, what does it feel like? It feels like exactly what you imagine it feels like. It feels like I'm getting a very small blowjob from a tick. And she was like, that sounds like a joke. And I stepped back and I was like, do I look like a joke? Which, I was like, look, my esteem has taken a blow during this whole pandemic. I have no employment. I don't have an income. I have None of this affirmation that comes with a job that lets you feel a certain purpose in your life. I was supposed to be on a 4-month tour of fringe festivals. Right now, I was not only going to be earning some money, but feeling that energy that we all go to the theater to feel. The only kind of energy that you can feel in a room full of strangers. And this is all we've got right now. This is it. This is an attempt to recreate that energy, right? And this is all I've got right now. But I said to Vanessa, I said, my esteem, though, is not so low that I am looking for some sort of quick fix that one might get from accepting the amorous advances of a tick. So please, can you help me get this out? Now, normally, we remove ticks with a pair of tweezers, but we looked around and tweezers gone. No explanation, just add it to the list of things that have gone wrong during this pandemic, which is fine. You know what I mean? Like in this particular instance, maybe I don't want tweezers. You know, a good 90% of the time things work out with the tweezers, but 10% of the time you pull the body of the tweezer, of the tick out and leave the head of the tick in. And I don't think I can really handle the thought of a head of a tick floating around inside my member, perhaps giving me a blowjob for the rest of my life. Too much to handle and think of. And so we go to our backup plan, which I was happy to do, which is basically you take a washcloth, you put it on your finger, and then on the outside of the washcloth, you apply some liquid soap. And then on the back of the tick, in very short, tight circles, you very quickly just spin your finger around on it until the tick becomes so annoyed that it's no longer in the mood to give you a blowjob. You know? Which is what we did. We waddled then into the living room, or I waddled. It was more a sympathy waddle from Vanessa. And she went to town. She went to town as the world's smallest blowjob was downgraded to the world's tiniest hand job, really just a finger job on one specific spot. She was just going like a drill bit, you know, just with her hand, just round and round and round. The tick refusing to let go, being like, I was here first. Vanessa being like, look, I have a license for this. It's called marriage, all right? Well, me, I'm wincing. And Vanessa's saying, is this hurt? I'm sorry. I'm like, no, it's not the pain. It's not physical so much as what I think we're witnessing on my face here are the death throes of my pride. Standing there with no clothes on, my underwear around my ankles. You know, our daughter running around, 2 years old, somewhere in the background, enjoying all of this, but me aware that 20 years from now, she will be describing this scene to a therapist who at the end of the hour will stroke a beard not so unlike my own and will assure her that she is misremembering, that this must certainly be a dream, that this therapist will then go on to interpret a total waste of my daughter's future money, not to mention the hours she will be spending there. And so I apologize to Vanessa and I say, look, if I ejaculate right now, I want you to know it's not because I'm enjoying this at all right? It would be a purely physiological reaction that I have no control over. And Vanessa said, well, I don't think it's me, really, who you would need to apologize to. And we both looked down at the tick, and I realized, oh my God, of course, you know, because if I were to ejaculate, which I wasn't going to, but never know, it could happen. And if I were, well, the head of the tick would be blown clean off, and that's no way to go. You know what I mean? You're giving someone a blowjob, and then the next thing you know, your head's blown off because you just can't handle the stream of ejaculate. Too much. No. So apologies all around, and eventually the tick, he read what was going. He let go. No harm, no foul. We let him out the back window, which is how so many of my sexual escapades end. and that was 2 weeks ago, and here we are now, August 7th, 2020, and there's no trace that any of this happened other than what it's done to my psyche, other than the memory of it, a memory that you now share as well. The only piece of this puzzle that you are not privy to is that you do not have a 2-year-old daughter who for the past 2 weeks has been running around and periodically yelling out her new favorite phrase, which is just, tick on my dick. Tick on my dick. Tick on my dick. Tick on my dick. And I know we shouldn't encourage her, but how can you not laugh when a 2-year-old blurts that out? And there's a little pride in me as well to think that my little girl at the tender age of 2 somehow already possesses a sense of comic timing. This little girl, for whom this pandemic has been nothing but wonderful, literally the best time she's had in her entire life, which I know is not saying much because she's had very few times in her life to choose between what were good and what were bad. But I mean, she's spending every day with her 2 favorite people in the world, her mother and her father. In fact, there's no one else she wants to hang out with. In fact, there's no one else she even knows. She's completely unaware of the concept of friendship. She doesn't even know there are other people she could be hanging out with. And when will this ever again be the case in our lives, right? And so she's enjoying herself, and of course she is, because normally we live in Brooklyn, New York, one of the most densely populated places on earth. But because my godmother happens to be the most generous woman on the face of the planet, well, she is weathering this viral storm up in her homeland of Syracuse, New York. She's offered us to stay in her very cute cottage at the very eastern tip of the very aptly named Long Island. We have been in Montauk since March. Montauk is a fishing/vacation beach community. And for the first time in my daughter's life, for the first time in my adult life, we have a backyard. And I didn't know I care about such things, because my single most prized possession turns out to be something I never thought I would own: a sprinkler. The amount of time I spend, the devotion with which I attend to our lawn, moving this sprinkler around in an effort to keep it green. If my wife were a more insecure person, she would wonder why I am more devoted to this lawn than to her. So it would seem to her, and we bought a medium-sized plastic molded playground set for our daughter. Never thought I would own one. I move it 1 to 2 times every day just to make sure the grass underneath it does not get crushed. I have planted so many flowers all around the house. I have acquired the trappings of a suburban life that I've never lived as an adult. We have an inflatable baby pool, and I have acquired as well something I've already mentioned, this beard, which I suppose I'm growing because I have moved to a fishing community. And this is my gesture towards those vacationers from New York who come out here hoping that they might spy an actual fisherman, an old man of the sea, so that they can photograph him and say, oh my God, there really are locals still in the Hamptons. And to make it clear, I know how this looks, okay? Whatever you've been thinking since the beginning of this broadcast, I think every single day, because this house is packed with mirrors. And I am in every single room of this house multiple times a day looking in these mirrors because we're not allowed to go anywhere else. And I think multiple times a day what you've been thinking, which is just, you've let yourself go. This is not a good look for you. You should shave. And yet, I continue to not shave as I look in the mirror multiple times a day and ask, who are you? Which, you should know, I take comfort in asking myself that question, because to ask that question is to automatically imply that the question needs to be asked, which is to say, this is not me. As pleasant as many trappings of this life is, this is not the life I chose to lead. This is not my life. I am in disguise right now as someone who is living this particular life. I am someone who has entered a parallel universe. Everything I know about parallel universes, I learned from one TV show, the only TV show that I was allowed to watch as I was growing up. My father would not allow my brother and myself to watch TV, and so I saw absolutely no primetime shows, never knew what any of the other kids were talking about when it came to TV and other pop cultural things as I was growing up, except for this one TV show, which nobody talked about because it was in reruns, but I watched it with the religious devotion that one normally devotes to religion. I am talking about the original Star Trek. And it was in season 2, episode 4, that Captain Kirk and 3 of his crewmates suddenly found themselves, due to yet another transporter malfunction. For God's sakes, get a dedicated handyman on the Enterprise to keep that thing in working order. And like that, Kirk and his little crewmates found themselves whisked to a parallel universe where they were surrounded by an identical Enterprise with doppelgangers of the entire crew. The one difference being that everyone in this universe was evil. This universe was ruled by a mad desire for power. Death meaning nothing. It was all about ego and narcissism. It was all about how you could dominate. The words empathy, sympathy, I don't think those words even exist in this universe. And every single person in this universe wore their evilness on their sleeve, except one, and that, of course, was Mr. Spock. Which, for those of you who don't know, Mr. Spock is a half-human, half-Vulcan creature who suppresses his human side and devotes himself to a life of logic. And can a creature that does not have emotions and just merely is a logical creature that is a product of his surroundings, can they be said to be evil? No. And so you might wonder, how can we separate the Spock from the original universe, from this evil alternate universe? Well, it's because in this parallel universe, the way viewers of the TV show know that this is the Mr. Spock, the parallel universe, is that he is wearing a beard. What we might call a goatee, but what in the show they call a beard. You see what I'm saying here? I am Mr. Spock. And my reactions, the way I cope to this environment I find myself in is just a product of my own logical thinking. I'm not responsible for any of this. I'm just now fated to be within it. Do you understand? And to shave this beard will be to admit finally that I am no longer in this parallel universe, this evil universe that I should have realized I was in 2016, right? When all of a sudden, who became president? You know what I mean? Like, that didn't tip me off. Like, you know what I mean? And that suddenly everything became about a mad grab for power and death meaning nothing and sympathy and empathy having no place in our world as it is today. And then the pandemic comes and I grow the beard. I'm like, oh, right, I'm in a parallel universe. I get it. And all I need to do is just figure out how to get back to my original universe, at which point I will shave off the beard. Or I will shave off the beard when I come to accept that parallel universes are just a poor man's way of trying to cope with a most unpleasant reality, with the existential angst of having his story pulled out right from underneath him. And I guess time will tell, won't it? Time will tell. Whenever it should happen that I might shave this beard, whenever I should come to accept that I am a product of this universe. It really is the reason I am growing this beard, right? Because I don't know what it was like for you back in March, but for us, when we first came here, it was ostensibly the very beginning of spring, but it seemed that the weather was frozen in a timeless place, that it seemed to mirror our psyches. Every day being like the last. The weather was neither hot nor was it cold out here in Montauk. It was every day overcast but not quite raining. It was weather that kept you insecure about whatever you were wearing, because you were always certain that shortly you would find that you were either too hot or too cold, and no amount of shedding or adding layers would ever make you feel quite comfortable about what you should be wearing. And no surprise that the weather is a mirror of what's going on in our minds. This time when it became apparent to all of us that this is just an illusion, really. That our storylines that we thought we'd all been progressing in our separate lives, the careers we thought we had, the dramas we thought we were embroiled to, in one moment just pulled out from underneath us. And suddenly we were all told to just sit at home and see nobody and look out the window at a climate that is as unchanging as we feel within our very hearts, to wait every single day. The only evidence that time itself was passing was the slow and inexorable growth of these follicles out of my chin. I had turned my face into a sort of primeval clock. This beard alone has held the promise that time is moving forward, and that one day all of this will be the past. And perhaps at that future moment we will look back at this present moment and we will shudder to remember how we felt now, alone and uncertain. How strange it is to realize that all our hopes and dreams are just illusions and can be as quickly pulled out from under us as not. Of course, this beard is a measure of time in an entirely different way as well, because I don't know if you've noticed just quite how white it is. I look at it, I'm like, oh my God. You know, it's so white. we're all going to grow old. I'm not surprised to grow old, but we will grow old at different rates, and there will be different indications that we are growing old. I mean, there are certain milestones that will, for every one of us, be exactly the same. You know, that moment when you're able to buy a ticket for a rated R movie and no one bats an eye, or that moment when you turn 21 and you go into a bar for the first time and you show your ID and they let you in and everyone's like, yay, you're getting older. And then slightly less celebratory, that moment when perhaps years later you go into the exact same bar and no one asks for your ID. Made even a bit more awkward when people you're with are asked for that same ID. And then the next milestone comes many years after that, just a year or so ago for me, at the age of 50. For those of you who have not yet hit 50, spoiler alert, you're going to receive a couple things in the mail that are going to surprise you. One is an invitation to join the AARP. I don't even know what it stands for. I don't want to know what it stands for, except that the RP stands for retired persons, and I am not a retired person. The evidence of this lockdown notwithstanding. But even stranger, in the mail will come a full-color brochure advertisement, a glossy invitation to put a deposit down on a plot in a cemetery. And I showed these to Vanessa and we laughed and we're like, oh my God, they think I'm going to die someday, you know? And we laughed, imagining the poor soul that had to put this brochure together. What a difficult job that must have been to try and make it look attractive to someone like me so that I, receiving it in the mail at the age of 50, might be like, oh my God, that's the place I want to rot. That's the place I want the worms to weave themselves in between my ribs. This is the place I want my bones to freeze solid in the winter. This is the view I want but never will be able to see, because I'll be underneath the earth and my eyes will have dried out and caved into my skull. No fun talking about death. It's much easier and better to laugh about it, or really just not talk about it at all. But whoa, has that become difficult when your only connection now to the outside world is via this machine and the internet, which every single time you turn it on gives you a running tally of exactly how many people have died from this coronavirus. As of today, August 7th, 2020, 160,000 people, which is an unfathomable number. It's not even a real number. I mean, you know, like, unless you are sick, unless you've known someone who died, it's just a bunch of digits. And yet you can't not imagine you becoming one of those numbers. Every time you wake up with a little tickle in the back of your throat and you think to yourself, is this it? Do I have it? Am I feeling fatigued? Is what happened, you know? Am I going to end up lying in a hospital bed, fighting for breath, as 160,000 people so far have done? And if you think it's just coincidence that 25% of the global death number is in the United States, like, oh, what bad luck will the U.S. have had? No, it's because of inept, terrible leadership from literally the worst person we could have chosen to lead our country. Someone who does not care about anyone. And it seems to me that this country is becoming a reflection of the person who is leading it. We have an election coming up in November, and if you do decide to vote for this person again, please don't tell me, because there's no way I won't think less of you. this person who holds some responsibility, certainly more than any other human on the planet, for 160,000 people drowning in their beds, hooked up to respirators, surrounded by people in protective gear, hazmat suits, no human contact, no one by their side, growing delirious and just thinking and uttering, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe." No wonder there has been such an explosion of protests across this country over racial injustice. It's not that we didn't know it existed. It's that we have for the first time been made to viscerally imagine what it is to die from asphyxiation, to not be able to breathe. This virus has no face, but for the first time, we felt we could look into its eyes via the eyes of a police officer in Minneapolis, and the expression on that face was blank. No empathy, a word that seems not to exist in this man or this virus's heart. The other milestone of age came just a week ago. It was in a supermarket in an IGA here in town. It's already a strange thing going to the supermarket, okay? You know, I live in Brooklyn normally. We don't have a car. The closest thing we have to a car out here in Montauk is a baby stroller. And so we push this baby stroller to the store and back. And I wonder what people think as I pass them pushing an empty baby stroller, wearing a surgical mask that cannot contain the beard behind it. People wondering whether I've just escaped from a maternity ward but have forgotten to actually take the baby, or whether they're picturing something entirely more tragic and perhaps psychotic. And I'm wheeling this stroller through the supermarket, trying to smile at other people who are also shopping, though I can't tell if they are smiling back because they are all wearing masks, nor do they know that I'm smiling at them for the exact same reason. And I'm putting into our baby stroller various cans of pork and beans and the like. And I get to the checkout counter, and the nice woman behind it, she runs all my products through. And before I run my card into the reader, she asks me a 2-word question that I was not prepared for. She says, "Senior discount?" And I'm like, what? And she asks the question again, not like it's a question, not like she's unsure. She asks it like she's just reminding me. And she says, "Senior discount." And I say, "How old do you have to be to get the senior discount?" And she says, 62. And I'm like, 62? I mean, someday I will be 62. And I'm sure I will think at that age what I have thought at every age I've ever been, that I can't believe I am this old. And I'm sure I will look back on 51, the age I am now, and will think, "You're so young. You have your whole life ahead of you. Don't waste your youth." But I am not there yet. And I say to the cashier, "No, thank you. I do not qualify for your discount." And as I left the supermarket, I thought to myself, I do like a discount, which I think is the next age milestone, since we all know that as people get older, their affinity for discounts seems to increase. And I got home and I said to Vanessa, I said, I just was offered a senior discount at the supermarket. And she laughed and she turned to our 2-year-old and she was like, "Your father is old." Our little girl, of course, for whom age means nothing. I mean, I'm holding her in my arm, and this is not a white beard for her. This is just the way her father looks. A couple days ago, we were showing her pictures of the moment we found out that she was pregnant. And no joke, she pointed at me and she said, "Who's that?" And I realized, then I was like, wow, this is what I look like now. That whenever it should come that I slip from this parallel universe back into the one I've always known and loved, whenever it should happen that I shave this beard, she may well look at me and wonder, where's my father? Into what dimension has he been taken? She might experience her very first pang of that rarefied emotion of nostalgia for this moment when she could look through my beard as she sometimes is wont to do, holding her right here 6 inches away from this monstrosity as a game she likes to play, picking into my beard and then going, uh-oh, oh, and I say, what? And then she'll pick it out, and then she'll go, tick. She doesn't say on my dick, but it's implied. And then she'll reach in again, another worried look, and she'll take it out, and she'll say, big tick. And I'll be like, well, get rid of it. And she'll throw it out the window. And then just a couple days ago, she reached in for a third time because she's got comic timing and she realizes things should come in 3 when you're being funny. And she reaches in, a worried look on her face, and she pulls out this imaginary thing. And I say, what now? And she says, paddleboard. If ever we needed evidence that our little girl is no longer a citizen of Brooklyn, but has become a full denizen of this fishing/vacation beach town where paddle boards have run amok, it is this moment right now when she feels comfortable to use this multisyllabic word as a punchline. I'm amazed, as I am every day, as she slowly is becoming a little girl. And Vanessa and I, as terrible as this moment has been, terrible for those who've gotten sick, but terrible for those of us who are uncertain about our futures, uncertain about our careers, who have no idea how we're going to make an income, who have no idea what our external purpose is in our lives. We are aware that there is some aspect of this pandemic for which years from now in the future, we will feel that rarefied emotion of nostalgia. Nostalgia for this time when everything slowed down. This nostalgia for when there is nothing for me to do but water the lawn and plant flowers and watch my daughter run through the sprinkler. I know there's something special about this. The bubbles that we form in our little social groups, the amount that we all check in on each other now, way more than in the past. Calling up people just to make sure they're okay. How are you holding on? How am I holding on? And don't get me wrong, there are moments that are akin to despair. But I don't want them to overshadow what is also a beautiful moment of families spending time together. This moment that Vanessa and I will look back on when we just spent every day with a beautiful 2-year-old girl. A moment that years from now we will perhaps look back on and we will call an age of intimacy. This moment, right now. Thanks for listening. This is the first moment I've reached out into the virtual void. And hopefully something has connected with you out there. It's a strange moment for all of us, but we are figuring it out in interesting ways. If you enjoyed this, by all means, let me know. There's nothing else going on here, you know? I'm just sitting outside in the yard that I spend so much time watering. I can't even leave it to do this Facebook Live video. And if you feel like donating, by all means do so. As I said before, there's no income. I've been touring and storytelling full-time since 2009. And this industry that we call theater is not coming back, not just until there's a vaccine, but until they mass produce the vaccine, until everybody takes it, until everyone feels comfortable that everybody else has taken it, until everyone feels, once again, that the only risk they're really taking in going to theater is whether they can make it through without needing to go to the bathroom. Thank you to the Minnesota Fringe for creating this event. If you want to see more shows, go to the minnesotafringe.org website. I'm also have another show on offer there. It was pre-recorded in front of a live audience. It's called Forbidden City, and it is somewhat about the birth of this little girl who I've been talking about tonight. I'm going to leave you now, fade the screen to black. But I want you to know that, in fact, I am still sitting right here, and that we are going to be listening to these crickets together. And then after that, I'm going to go and hang out with Vanessa, and we're going to go work on a puzzle, maybe. Thanks a lot, everyone, and be safe.